Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Church in Salt Lake City. And my goodness, the time is just about nigh, and we're going to have ourselves a wonderful Christmas Eve ceremony tonight, and then, of course, tomorrow, Christmas Day. I wonder how many of you would have made it this far without having prepared a list. Do we have any list makers here in the... Oh, I have quite a few. Yeah. Well, I usually draw up a heavy-duty things-to-do list before Christmas. I am the black belt at lists. I even have lists of lists. 7 pages of expectations that are in themselves enough to permanently destroy the spirit of Christmas. But this year I started from somewhere else in my mind. New list. 1 page. A things to be list. Concentrating on the feelings I want to have, the condition of mind and spirit I yearn for, the quality of life I wanted to manifest, the vibrations I wanted to give off to other people. A things to be list at Christmas. Then I boiled the list into 1 line and then summarized that line in 1 word. And then I wrote it down. I wrote that 1 word down on a tiny piece of paper. And then I wrapped that tiny piece of paper around a small candy cane and ate it. List and all. Oh, sure, it's a little crazy, but since when is Christmas supposed to make sense? I mean, who makes the rules and regulations about Christmas anyway? Who says it must be an orderly, organized affair? Who's in charge of Christmas? Me. That's who. The Christmas list eater. Now, I suppose you want to know what that 1 word was. Nope. You got to work it out for yourself. Like Christmas. Because if it ain't inside you somewhere, all the lists in the world won't make it happen. But here, have a candy cane on me. Only if you don't like what happened. Symbol of light and of knowledge, symbol of warmth and freedom. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. Here we gather to celebrate hope. Hope and the infinite possibilities of love. Can we open up our intergenerational family service, turning our hymn books, please, to number 248. So when you play a duet, is that just half the work as normally? Yeah, okay, good. So I want for our younger ones to realize that in the order of service it says a meditation, and we usually have a meditation at this time, and it's an opportunity for us to, for all of us, to think about things that we normally don't think about. We have this little slice of time on a Sunday morning to just kind of sit and be and think about stuff that normally doesn't enter our awareness. And so our meditation this morning is something, I picked this out with kids in mind, and I want you to think about it. This is something, usually people think about meditation and prayers in terms of asking for stuff, but keep in mind what we're doing is just thinking about stuff you normally wouldn't think. And a good friend of mine, in fact, who many of you know, Robert Fulgham, he was always really big in helping out the Salvation Army at this time of year. Now, how many kids know about the Salvation Army? How many kids know about this? Any of you know? You know? Okay, great. And you'll probably find them, in front of a big grocery store, and they have a big kettle, and they're asking for money to help feed the poor. And so that's why Robert Fulgham does it. But he had one extraordinary thing happen to him, which I'm going to share. And I want the kids to realize, do not do this yourself. Okay? Don't, just listen and think about it, but don't ever try this. Well, we were standing there in the damn dark rain of it all, shaking the dinky bell for all it was worth. Dinkily, 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 dinkily. I hear it in my sleep. We were standing there, hopping up and down to keep warm, looking needy-like, doing our threadbare best to attract pity and warmth and charity. And this guy, this big guy in a camel's hair coat, cashmere scarf, Gucci buckle pumps, pigskin gloves, a serious hat, and a 6-bit cigar. This elegant guy stops, and he fishes way down deep in his pocket. And from the fullness of his heart, he produces a great big dime. He has a dime to put in the kettle for Jesus, the Son of God and man. He smiled. And that's when I hit him with my tambourine and the dinky bell too, and dumped the kettle all over his serious hat, and finally I bit him on the leg. Let Jesus love him. The Salvation Army is only human. Amen. Of course, Christmas is a time when the Spirit is such, it reminds us of the need to offer genuine hospitality from the heart, where in this world nobody is a stranger and all are welcome. And so it is in this vein that this church has taken on the duties of sanctuary. And there's a lot of organization that is involved in providing sanctuary for an immigrant family who, rather than be deported and have the family split up, are able to find shelter and a bit of a home in churches. And there are about 30 churches around the country that are serving as sanctuary. Not all of them Unitarian, but at least, let's see, 1, 2, I can count 4. We would make 5. So that's a pretty hefty percentage. So to help organizationally, we actually now have a sanctuary table out in Elliott Hall, and there are 4 lists. Here we go, back to the lists. 4 lists, 4 opportunities to help volunteer. And let me just explain really briefly. It's really quite self-evident. One of the guidelines, one of the rules by which we must abide is that there need to be 2 people in the church other than the family whom we are hosting at all times, 24/7. And so there is a list for hosts, and it lists exactly when the when the hours are, which hours, which segment of the day we're going to need people, and just sign up and if you want to be a host. But there are other needs as well. We have a need for, and by the way, every one of these various subgroups, they all have their chairs. We're not going to ask anybody to chair anything and take a great responsibility. It's just being part of the whole network that can extend a hand. So we need people to sign up for shopping, and we have a great person who is chairing the shopping committee, a male, by the way. It's so good to have a male organizing the shopping. Laundry, childcare. So please, if you feel, and the more people that sign up, the less we have to do this. And so, so think about where your interests may turn. Is it acting as a host during some portion of the day when the family is here? Or would you rather help with the shopping, help with child care, help with the laundry? All essential. Please take a look inside your order of service for all the announcements. I mean, again, we just are chock full of announcements. I'm not going to recite them all here. And just a reminder, I hope that we'll see a bunch of you again here tonight. 5:30 or 7 o'clock for a candlelight service, full choir, and then some. And it'll be a lovely, and even just, I think I ordered up, I hope you're not angry, I ordered up a little bit of snow for the candlelight service tonight. So it should be very Norman Rockwell-esque. This time the offering will gratefully be received, a chance to greet one another and kind of be the first to wish each other a Merry Christmas. There's something about Christmas which probably impacts those who are a little bit older who are sitting in the pews this morning. It stirs up a lot of memories. You know, it's just, you kind of think back of some very special times of Christmas through the years. And as far as the little ones go, all I can say is just really enjoy Christmas and just remember as much of it as you can, because maybe someday in the future you're going to think back and say, oh yeah, that's right, this is what happened at Christmas long ago. I got two memories that I want to share, and also kind of ask maybe if some of the kids may want to help out with this. My first memory goes way back. I mean, my goodness, I was about 6 years old, maybe 7. And we lived in a very, very, very poor neighborhood. All, you know, brick-attached houses, and it was a difficult neighborhood. But I had, across the street, I had no brothers or sisters, and so the closest really to family that I had was a little boy across the street who was just a few months older than I. His name was Donnie. And Donnie and I were very, very, very good friends. And it was, maybe 2 weeks before Christmas. I'll tell you what happened. First, let me explain that in New York City at that time, anybody care to guess how many different newspapers we had? Anybody want to guess? We had, huh? 5? No. We had, well, I see a hand up. 1 newspaper? No. Even Salt Lake has 2. We had sort of 2. Don't quote me. That is, we actually had 2 papers. We had 9 newspapers, and it was down to 9 because some of them had already merged. One of them was the World Telegram and Sun that had merged. So we're down to 9 newspapers, and my friend Donnie's dad worked for the World Telegram and Sun, and about 10 days, maybe 2 weeks before Christmas, he got laid off from his job. And they didn't have any money to begin with. And I remember I was home, and there was a knock on the door, and it was Donnie's mom. And she had been crying, or was still crying, sort of, and my mother invited her in. They sat down and they talked, and of course my mother asked, what happened? What's wrong? What's wrong? And that's when she explained that her husband had lost his job, and they had absolutely nothing. And she tried to explain to Donnie and his older brother that there would be no toys, no gifts this Christmas. And she kind of stopped sobbing long enough, and she said, I didn't quite understand what Donnie meant when he said to me, that's okay. I just want to feel Christmas. And she had no idea. Anybody here want to guess what he meant by that? He just wanted to feel Christmas. I don't care about the gifts. You're 6 years old. I don't care about the gifts. I just want to feel it. Kids, anybody here around 6, 7, 8 years old? Can you give us a clue? What do you mean by, what was meant by I just want to feel Christmas? Any of the older folks have anything? Yeah, okay, yeah. What do you think? Be with his family and feel his love with him. That's close. That's close. There was one other thing that he wanted that cost money so he could feel Christmas. And finally, yeah, Ellen, did you? Oh, okay. And I'm supposed to have eyes in the back of my head. Whew, I failed. What do you think?
Have a happy Christmas.
Have a happy Christmas, yeah. But how do you feel a happy Christmas? Well, I'll tell you, I won't keep you in suspense forever. All he wanted was a Christmas tree. That, for him, was the symbol of it feeling like Christmas. It did, a tree did something inside of him that's all that really mattered. The most important part of Christmas, not the gifts underneath, but the tree. Maybe it was the smell. That was long before we had artificial trees. We had real trees, the smell of the pine, the decorations, the ornaments, all lovely. That's what he wanted. But here's the sadness. They didn't have money for a Christmas tree. Even back then. Was anybody get sticker shock by seeing the price of Christmas trees this year? I'm going to take a leave of absence next year and chop down some Christmas trees and sell them on a lot somewhere. That's what I'm going to do. And so the story ends with a bit of a mystery. I don't know how it happened because I was sent out of the room. And all I know that somehow they did have a Christmas tree. And the Christmas tree went up about 2 days before Christmas. And I don't think it was my family, but I think my family was responsible for maybe organizing the neighbors. And it was just one of those Christmas mysteries. So Donnie was able to feel Christmas. He never felt any kind of sorry for himself at all. In fact, for him, it was a great Christmas because he had his tree. Speaking of trees, let me tell you one other story, and this goes back, I can tell you exactly, in 1982. 1982, when I was a young minister with brown hair, long brown hair, and a brown beard, very full. The Unitarian Universal Association had this program. It was called Minister on Loan. And the way that worked was an established church, of course I was part of an established church in New England, would send their minister off to some area, that small church that didn't have a minister, and the minister, in a period of time of 6 weeks, was supposed to get them so excited about having a minister and get so many new members in that they would be large enough to have a minister. So I felt very honored. I was selected for this program and went off to Crown Point, Indiana. Anybody know Crown Point, Indiana? It's a little town. What it's famous for is that it's next door to Hammond, Indiana. Now, do you know Hammond, Indiana? You should. Hammond, Indiana is known for having the largest Baptist Sunday school in the country. So I'm going to ask you to take another guess. How many kids were in their Sunday school? Anybody want to guess? How many kids? Yeah, Gracie, how many kids? 100 kids? We've got 150. So they had a lot more than 100 kids. The biggest Sunday school. How many kids did they have? They had 10,000 kids in their Sunday school. And on the way to my little Unitarian church, I saw maybe 25 school buses, Hammond Baptist Church Sunday School, just roaming around picking up kids. How many kids would like to have a church bus come by and pick them up for Sunday school? Moms? No, put your hands down. No. Well, I got to this church, and it was such a warm experience, because what they had done, this was a group of about 40 people. They got together and they bought a freestanding Baptist gym, okay? And they converted the gym. I like that word, converted. They converted that gym into a Unitarian Universalist church with so much love and imagination. I mean, I still have a mental picture, which is great. And I got there, it must have been in January, so there was still a big buzz about what had happened. And here's the situation. Now, this was farmland, okay? You usually don't think of Unitarians being farmers, but parts of the country, that's the way, that was their way of eking out an existence. And there was a fire in a farm that belonged to a member of that church, or a family in that church. And the barn of that family burned to the ground. And in that barn, they had stored, among other things, all their Christmas stuff. You know? Do you guys have a storage place for all your Christmas stuff? Okay, can you imagine? Gone. Just gone. Lost everything. Nothing survived. Okay? Gentlemen? David? About storage? Okay. 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 At coffee hour, we'll hear David's story about Christmas storage. So everything was lost, burnt to the ground. And so the congregation decided that each family in the congregation would bring an ornament to this family for Christmas. Okay? Now that sounds easy enough, doesn't it? Okay? It's too easy. What do you think the rule was in terms of the ornament that they were to bring to the family? What was the rule? They had to make it? No. Although maybe that was part of it. Didn't they have to make it? Yes. Each family had to bring their favorite ornament. So in this way, every single family was able to identify of having lost something in the fire. And it was, as you can imagine, the most beautifully decorated tree probably in the world, full of everybody's favorite ornament. I think that's a great story, a great lesson. We need to give of ourselves perhaps more than we originally had planned, and it turns out to be the best thing we can do, and it sure helps make Christmas Christmas. You know, I often return to my little friend from across the street who insisted that feeling Christmas was the most important part of Christmas one can imagine. And so I think even today, gee, what does Christmas feel like, or how ought Christmas feel like? Isn't there something inherent in Christmas that calls for a bit of sacrifice, maybe a lot of sacrifice, in order to make the world feel more right? And then, of course, we beg the question, why stop this gesture of giving something up to help improve the lives of others? You know, why stop when Christmas is over? Why can't it be the way we live all year long? When I was a teenager, long before there were Xboxes and video games and smartphones, we played pinball. And I think you still may see some pinballs at a museum or two these days. The game consisted of shooting a pinball. It's kind of a row, and you just pulled back like a trigger, and then a ball would go up. And here was your playing field, and there was a little bit of an angle, and the ball would go up, and on its way down would hit various things and accumulate points. And then it would come down to the bottom, and you had a chance to send it back into play by swinging just almost like some bats. And sometimes, if we're feeling a little bit greedy and we wanted more points, like it was kind of, the ball was going back between the 250-point thing there on the board, now you're not allowed to shake it, because when you shake it, the game's over, and the basically goes tilt and whistle sound, and everybody knows you just really messed up. And so what you try to do is very, very gently kind of help move that ball around, and you can't go too far because you don't want to go tilt. And so what you're really doing is you're trying to cheat and get away with it. Most of the time, you can't cheat, and you just, because you're so greedy, you want those points. You want more and more, and accumulate more of those points, that you kind of lose your sense, and then the machine goes tilt, and everybody at the arcade knows you were trying to cheat. Well, it feels to me sometimes that we try to cheat a little bit at life. And when we cheat a little bit at life, it goes tilt. That's to say, we're off balance. We're not playing by the rules. We're being too greedy. Not a good idea. Now, here's an example. In my very, very first church, which I served, located in a coastal town in Massachusetts, I learned for the first time what a nor'easter was. Nor'easter is an incredible storm that sweeps down from Maine, which is northeast of Massachusetts, comes down from Maine, creating chaos. Boats are knocked off their mooring, and they land in the streets. Can you imagine walking down the street? There are all these boats just sitting there. That's how strong the nor'easter is. Windows get broken and shattered. Everybody's busily taping their windows before the storm hits. Debris is all over the place. So just before a nor'easter was predicted to hit this little town, I thought it would be wise to head down to the market to get a few supplies, just in case we lost power. It might be good to have some food on hand that didn't need refrigeration, because the refrigerator would be useless. When I got to the store, I stood in utter disbelief. People were filling their shopping carts about as high as a mountain. And most of the people had 2 shopping carts that they were pushing around, filled, unbelievable, just balanced so, and they were just making their way through the store with these enormous, enormous shopping carts. Hoarding supplies for oneself was obviously their primary task. Well, I was new at this, and so I figured, oh well, when in Rome. And so I began filling my cart like a madman with a few items that remained on the shelves. So I accumulated quite a bit, and when I got back home, I thought, no, this isn't right. And I actually felt ashamed of myself. I had taken enough stuff to see me through 10 storms at least. And so I called some elderly parishioners, mostly shut-ins, and asked how their supplies were holding out and if they had enough before the storm hit. And some were actually a little nervous about the storm. And so I made my rounds with some basic food stuff, and they responded with such gladness. It was as though I were giving them pieces of gold. And I remember thinking, acting fairly, distributing goods equitably, should not seem so unusual that it can actually bring people to tears. I did not feel like a hero, although I was treated as such. It's all about achieving balance in life. It's about thinking beyond oneself. That scene at the store with everyone acting crazed like there were people playing on the board of life, with all those mountains of shopping carts. It was like in that store, it just went tilt. We all took more than we needed. It was a lot like cheating. Tilt. And so tonight is Christmas Eve, and we're going to be celebrating the birth of a baby born in Bethlehem. His name was Jesus, and he grew up to be a leader and a teacher and a rabbi with mustard. And what I mean by that is the stuff that he taught wasn't easy. The stuff he taught was spicy, made you notice, perhaps too hot to handle. And his ideas, the stuff that he taught, these ideas were called revolutionary. Essentially, he thought the people, he thought the people at that time, we're talking about 2,000 years ago, at that time, the people were so greedy that society at that time kind of went tilt. And so Jesus tried to bring down the powerful to where life seemed more fair to all. He was trying to get people to understand their priorities, like feeding the hungry, clothing the poor, living with a generous spirit. Basically, a reversal of power relations. What does that mean, to reverse power relations? Well, it's kind of like if you look at society and you've got the rich and powerful up here and the poor and powerless down here. And Jesus said what we needed to do was change things so that the last will be first and the first will be last. And this child grew up trying to make life more fair for everyone. He spoke about compassion and the need for peace in the world. And this is so important that the stories about this man's birth are filled with miracles. And you know them because we hear them every Christmas. Angels appear, and the angels just talk up a storm. Wise men drop everything and follow a star to the place where the baby is born, and they bring gifts. They don't even know if it's a girl or a boy who's going to be born, but they bring gifts anyway. And so on the night that the baby was born, the world seemed quiet and calm and silent, and something very different was happening in the world at that time. A miracle was on its way. Someone was born who would try to stop the world from going tilt. Now, Jesus sure got the message out, but few would actually listen to him carefully. And that's still the case. Why, just this week, a new tax plan was passed that would help the rich get richer. And in order to balance this huge deficit where money goes to the richest of the rich, meager services to the poor will need to be cut. And so the poor will have less than they had starting out, and the rich will have so much more. This tilt. It isn't right. Tilt. It reminds me of the time in the food store before the storm. All everybody thought about was themselves. But let's get back to feeling Christmas. It's not just getting presents and more presents. It's also about what will I give to others so life will be more equal. It may mean giving up something of what we have, a little sacrifice, having less for ourselves so that others do not need to go hungry, but to make sure that they will be able to get medicine when they are sick. And so when we make these long lists of what we want for Christmas, gimme, 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 maybe we should stop for a moment and think otherwise. Stop long enough to hear the true message of Christmas. In a world that has gone tilt, we must pursue a world of gentleness, kindness, and peace. When things go wacko, we need to make sure that everyone is treated with dignity, has access to health care, a roof over their heads, food, so that everyone has a chance to live his, her life with integrity. So what does Christmas feel like? It feels like a world we would like to live in. It feels like a world which no longer goes tilt. So let's conclude our service, turning our hymn books to number 240 with an explanation. If you read music, you're in trouble because it's a different, the words will be sung to the old standard. Is that right, David? It's the classic, okay, it's the classic way we sing that song, and we're just going to do 3 verses. 240. May everyone enjoy Christmas and be touched by a Christmas spirit. Christmas is so many things, but let us not forget it is also an invitation. Christmas invites us to look at the world a little differently than we may have done throughout the year. Christmas brings other people into view and invites us to share with them with gladness and to work work hard for peace and justice, just like that little baby wanted us all to do a long time ago. Amen.